Thank you very much, Regent Falbo. I'm delighted to be here. It's always a pleasure to be invited to speak to the Regents. I am going to start by celebrating some of the many, many good things that are happening on the University of Madison campus. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't take advantage of this opportunity to do that. But I will then segue into some of the real challenges and talk about some of the implications of the current budget proposals on our campus and what they might mean. So we have been celebrating a really great year at UW-Madison. 2014 was a record year for education. We awarded a record-breaking number of bachelor's degrees, over 6,600, over 10,000 total degrees. The fourth year in a row we've exceeded 10,000, and we are one of the nation's top producers of PhDs. Our top three majors, for those of you who are curious, among our undergraduates, are biology, economics, and political science. And of course, economics is by far the most important of those, so I'm delighted to see all those students in economics. This past spring, returned to, after 25 years of having a whole variety of different commencement ceremonies, returned to one single big commencement ceremony for our undergraduate and our master's students in Camp Randall Stadium. Governor and Ambassador John Huntsman was our speaker. And I'm very pleased to announce that we are obviously going to do this again next year, and Katie Couric has accepted our invitation to be our speaker in May. So those of you who want to come and be part of our commencement celebration, the nice thing about Camp Randall is there are seats for everyone, so you're all invited. We have an excellent entering class in 2014. We had a record-breaking number of freshman applications for this past for the freshman class of fall 2014, over 30,000. We are a very strong school. I would even say we're something of a hot school out there at the national level. And I'll show you the increase in applications we're continuing to get. It gives us really, we've got a lot of visibility and a lot of presence in the higher education market right now. The entering class had 6,300 freshmen from 46 states in the District of Columbia. Of course, the majority of those were from Wisconsin. The 5 states outside Wisconsin who are most likely to be in our freshman class are, of course, Minnesota, then Illinois, California, New York, and New Jersey. We have among the most racially and ethnically diverse class that we've ever had, and one of the most internationally diverse classes that we've had in a decade. And all of that, I think, is good news about the strength of the university and the people who want to come and get a high-quality education there. Our applications for this coming year continue to grow. They're up 8% so far. We don't have all of them quite in yet. There's still a few more that will come in. We have applicants from everywhere, 101 countries, all 50 states, 8,500 applications from every one of Wisconsin's 72 counties. Our Wisconsin applications are up 6%, which particularly in a world where the demographics of the 18-year-olds are declining, actually means we're doing a good job of recruiting. I realize that I'm in a bit of competition with my fellow chancellors on that one. They may not view this as good news. But we continue to attract a very strong class. And here's what I think some of the best news. Our applications among underrepresented students of color are actually up 15% this year, and they were up last year as well. So we've been working hard on the diversity front, and I think we're seeing some of the results of that, and hopefully we'll see that reflected in the class that is put together for next fall as well. A couple of educational trends that also reflect some of the hard work we've been doing to continue to improve. There's always room for improvement at a big school. This is our retention rate. And our retention rate has been drifting up. It's at an all-time high of 95%. This is the percent of people who come back in their sophomore year after being a freshman on campus. Outside of a few very small private schools, this is as good as it gets. It's much better than many of our public competitors. And the really good news here, as well as that high retention rate, is notice what enormous improvements we've made among our targeted minority groups, our underrepresented students of color. Their retention rate is virtually identical to the all-student retention rate. And again, I think that reflects some really good efforts in our advising community and our first-year classes across the university. We have also been working to improve graduation rates, and graduation rates continue to move upward. There is always more progress to be made on this. We're reporting 6-year graduation rates. That's a standard number often reported by universities across the country. You can also see here, while our targeted minority students haven't quite caught up, we are at least narrowing that gap. Again, something we have to keep working on. Some of the increase in graduation rates and a decrease in time to graduation that goes along with this is the result of direct monetary investments on our campus. 4 and 5 years ago, we received permission to do some differential tuition increases that we put into something called the Madison Undergraduate Initiative. And the result of that is we really invested. We invested in advising, we invested in financial aid, and we invested in new faculty for those really big introductory courses. And you can see the effects in our time to graduation. It's a wonderful example of well-targeted and well-spent additional investment money can improve the educational quality of our universities. And I'm very worried in the current budget climate, if we start disinvesting in those things we've just spent the last 5 years investing in, the numbers will start going the other way. I should also note on this that graduation rates are calculated among those who start at the university in their freshman year. If you actually tracked where they, not just who graduates from Madison, but who starts here but transfers elsewhere, and/or you add in people who take a longer time to graduate. I think, for instance, Nick is in this list because if you start, you go away for some reason, and then you come back, you have longer than a 6-year graduation rate. If you add all of that up, our graduation rate is well in excess of 95%. So among those who actually start at Madison, a very high share end up getting a degree. This is the percentage that end up getting the degree at Madison, okay? I want to make sure you understand that in the numbers. One of the things I'm really rather proud about, which is a little squishier in some sense, but I think no less notable, the National Survey of Student Engagement goes out and asks students across campuses how they rate their experience. And 92% of our freshmen, 94% of our seniors rated their overall experience at UW-Madison as excellent or very good. That is well above most of our peers. And I think also a reflection of just, not only do we have a quality education, but it's also just fun to be at Madison. And we have a great campus and a great place to be, wonderful student organizations, wonderful staff who work with students on many things, and a great environment here in the Madison area to live in. Finally, I want to note that the Wisconsin experience is more than just what happens in the classroom or what happens out on Langdon Street. There's a lot of learning that goes on that's very consciously planned outside the classroom. Almost 1,500 students volunteered with the Morgridge Center for Public Service last year, working in the community as tutors on environmental issues with elderly. That's an enormous contribution to the community, and that type of experiential learning can often be just as important as what students learn in the classroom. 25% of our undergraduates study abroad. We are in the top 10 in terms of the number of students sent overseas and study abroad programs. In an increasingly global world, that's a very important metric. And I think this is very important for those who care about workforce development and job preparation. 63% of our seniors have, over their period of time at Madison, held an internship or a clinical position, getting some hands-on real work experience as they prepare to enter the workforce full-time. That's a number we can continue to increase, and indeed we are working on, but those trends, I think, are good. There are a few new faces on campus. I think almost everyone here has met our new provost, Sarah Mangelsdorf, who comes from us most immediately from Northwestern, but who before that was at the University of Illinois, at the University of Michigan, someone with enormous experience in higher education who's just done a great job. We have a new dean of the pharmacy school, Steve Swanson, who comes from the University of Illinois and their pharmacy school, and a new dean of international studies, Guido Podesta, who's one of our own, who's moved into that position. And talking about what's happened on campus, it would not be complete if I didn't mention a few other outside the classroom experiences. We had a great trip to the Final Four, and I know that I'm certainly counting on going again. The team's been doing wonderful, and it was a great experience last year. If you had asked me a decade ago, said, oh, you're going to be Chancellor of Wisconsin, what's going to be the best thing you do in your first year? I don't think I ever would have said, oh gosh, that national basketball tournament. But it was a great experience, and I really want to give the team and Coach Bo Ryan credit for the great things that they are doing. And we've had, as you know, a winning football season as well. Here you see Mel Garden, who's just, sort of really literally tore up the field, won many awards, a great win at the Outback Bowl over Auburn. And I want to note that this is not just about winning games, it's also about running an athletic program that emphasizes student athletes and not just winning games on the field. We had 3 academic All-American student athletes named this past year, 8 academic All-District students named, 46 Big Ten distinguished scholars, and 196 Big Ten academic honorees. And our average grade point average across all teams and all student athletes is over 3.0. And you know, that to me says as much about the quality of this program and what our coaches are coaching and talking with their students about as the win-loss record on the field. Let me segue from students to research. It's the second mission, to be innovative, to advance knowledge, to search for truth, dare I say. We have a wonderful faculty and a wonderful set of staff who work on many, many research projects. One of the coins of the realm is how many faculty do you have elected to these really big, well-known national academies. And we had 11 UW faculty elected last year to either the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, the National Academy of Engineering, or the National Academy of Sciences. That's a wonderful number. In fact, I just heard we've got 2 more engineers elected to the National Academy of Engineering this year. Our faculty win all sorts of awards. These are just 3. Believe me, this could be a very, very long slide. Francis Halzen was named the Smithsonian Innovator of the Year. He's the person working in Antarctica on how the universe is changing. Yoshi Kawayaki, who is a researcher on flu issues and has been very involved in the current Ebola debate, won the Popular Mechanics Magazine Breakthrough Award. And on a somewhat different note, Richard Davis in our music department was the NEA Jazz Masters Fellow named this past year. And I could keep going on this, but those are just 3. Very important is not just what happens with our senior well-known faculty, but our junior faculty. And I'm not going to read through this list, but this is some of the things that our younger faculty on campus, some of the awards that they won and the recognition they had. And this too, I think, is a very important list of you know, what the sort of people that we're mentoring. And these people who got these awards are, of course, the senior faculty who are going to be making some of the real breakthrough discoveries of the next 10 and 20 years. What does this research look like? I could talk about this for a long time. Let me just give 3 examples of research that are driving innovation and reaching out and changing what happens in this state, this nation, and this world. First of all, we had the largest federal grant that we've ever received awarded this year, a record-breaking $70 million grant that will be paid out over 7 years from the National Institutes of Health. We're leading 11 universities with this grant, looking at research on asthma and children's asthma and how it interacts with environments, and essentially asking what is it that we can be doing, both what more do we need to know about asthma and its causes, conditions, consequences, and how do you apply this research in the field to actually reducing the epidemic of inner city asthma in this country. We have a wonderful 5-year, $10 million grant that we received from the USDA to look at dairy sustainability. And as you know, for 166 years, we've been leading in dairy research. This is one aimed at identifying practices that farms can take on to adapt to changing climate conditions, anything from changes in rainfall to changes in greenhouse gases. And this also is a big collaborative project in which we are directing a project that 7 universities around the country are involved with. Finally, we have this great initiative that just started called the 4W Initiative, Women and Well-Being in Wisconsin and the World. It's being led by our School of Human Ecology, together with the Global Health Institute and the Department of Gender and Women's Studies. And this is a local to global effort trying to both identify and promote research on women's well-being around the world, but also to identify how that research can be applied in the field. So this is, among other things, going to create leadership and service opportunities for UW students overseas involved in research and application programs. And there's some really exciting stuff going on here. If any of you want to know more, this is one that I'm very excited about. Now, I was at this point going to segue into, a 10-minute conversation about our entrepreneurship programs, our tech transfer efforts, our industry partnerships, all the things we're doing to interact our innovation and our research with new startups and with regional economic development. But I'm not going to do that. I am going to segue instead into a discussion of challenges for the university in light of some of the recent budget news. Let me conclude what I've said by noting that UW-Madison right now, by virtually any measure, is at a wonderful moment of opportunity. We have high and growing student applications. We are a hot school out there. We have a top national and international reputation for our educational quality, as well as the research that we do, top-ranked faculty with major scientific research projects being very successful in pulling a lot of research money into the state, more than $1 billion that gets spent here locally and in the state. More involvement with economic development than ever before. This is, in any organization you've ever been in, a time to invest and to grow and to continue to build. But we are facing some serious challenges that are going to limit our ability to make the investments that we need to retain this level of quality. Because I can promise you, our competitors are not standing still. They are making investments, and we need to invest with them. Let me talk about two challenges and then segue to the budget. This is all connected. Challenge number one, recruiting and retaining top faculty and staff. At the end of the day, the reputation of the university is the reputation of its researchers and its faculty, its teachers. And if you don't have the faculty, you're not going to have staff to hire and you're not going to have students. Great teachers, world-class researchers, bring in research dollars. The state does not support our research. The research is supported by entrepreneurial efforts of our faculty who bring in federal and private sector and industry dollars to support it. Having great teachers and researchers attracts good junior faculty. It builds the pipeline. It attracts talented graduate students, and it attracts top-notch undergraduates because of the reputation of our school and its departments. Our reputation depends upon its faculty. Many of you have seen some of these charts on salary comparisons. This is looking at full professors at UW-Madison, that's the blue line, compared to the top line, which is at our peer institutions. Our peer institutions are other public sector universities. I'm not comparing anyone to the big privates here, the Dukes and the Harvards and the Stanfords, who are also our competitors in hiring faculty. We are currently 12% below. We are actually the lowest paid set of full professors in the Big Ten. This is not a good place to be when you want to attract and retain your top faculty. And I worry about this more than almost anything else. I need to do more to invest in my faculty and need the resources to be able to do that. Hiring top faculty is expensive. We extended 143 offers last year. We had 101 accepted. That's actually, for those of you who don't work in higher education, that's a very good acceptance rate. Most of those faculty had multiple offers around the country and in some cases around the world. 52% of these faculty required startup packages beyond their salary of $100,000 or more. Many of those people, of course, were in the sciences because you expect startup packages in labs and in research work, particularly in the sciences. I would note that we already have our first casualty from this budget debate in terms of our faculty. The School of Medicine and Public Health was in the final throes of hiring a really top researcher into directing one of their centers. And that individual who was making his final decision this past week sent an email to a number of us in the last several days saying that he is not coming. He's been following the news in Wisconsin, and he's really afraid that if he comes here, we will not be able to invest in research in medical science of the sort that is needed in the years ahead to be the sort of place that he wants to be at, okay? And that will be only the first of many casualties as a result of what's happening in this state and of the many newspaper articles, not just in Madison, but around the country, about disinvestment in higher education in Wisconsin. I'm going to skip this next slide. It's not just a matter of hiring faculty, it's obviously a matter of retaining faculty. Salary, not surprising from the numbers I've shown you, is the most common issue reported as a consideration when people take an outside offer. The average outside offer at UW-Madison comes in with a salary offer that is 42% above their existing faculty salary here on campus. That tells you how far below we are and how much predilection people have to thinking about leaving. Because if you can suddenly increase your salary by 42%, you've got to look really seriously at those other offers. We have to match those when people get outside offers. We've got to be identifying people who are at risk of outside offers, making sure their salary stays up to market, because by the time people get an outside offer, they're often halfway out the door. They've really thought about it hard. So it's not just a matter of matching offers, it's a matter of working to retain people at risk of these offers. Between the last 5 years, 2009 and 2013, UW-Madison made over 1,000 faculty salary adjustments to faculty considered to be in potentially high demand by other institutions. Despite all of that, as you know, we've had very few across-the-board salary increases, and we continue to lag our competitors quite a bit on the salary front. We have to change that. Here's a indication of what's been happening to our retention offers. The the size of the bar is the number of the number of outside offers our faculty received in that year. The dark blue is the number that we won, that we kept people. The light blue is the number of people who left. Notice that as the recession hit, there were some schools that weren't very affected by this, and they went rating. And even as the recession has declined, we are still being rated. And I can promise you at UW-Madison, as a result of the headlines of this past week, we are going to have a huge increase in outside offers to our faculty. They will come rating our best faculty. We have to respond. Now, last year we actually did pretty well. Out of 170 retention efforts, 156 were successful. We lost only 14 faculty members. But you cannot afford to be complacent given where our salaries are sitting relative to market. This one, as I say, this keeps me up at night. It's a knife's edge of how do you keep good faculty in the face of paying them too little. Second challenge, meeting shifting educational demands. I know the Regents have talked about this quite a bit in recent months. We've got a big movement into STEM fields on our campus. Among undergraduates, that's the bottom line. The percentage of students majoring in STEM-related fields has gone from 32% to 44% in the last 14 years. Among our graduate students, the shift has been 50% up to 57%. As more and more students move into a certain set of fields, it creates a number of challenges for us. We obviously need faculty to teach. You don't want to, as these are the hot fields, you don't want to be raising student-faculty ratios and reducing services. We have to provide instructional space, and many of our big classrooms and labs are not set up to accommodate more students. We have to provide the tutoring and educational support, which is particularly important because we want to make sure that it's a cross-section of America and of our class that gets attracted to these STEM fields, not just the white men who have traditionally been in many of these fields. And attracting more women, attracting historically disadvantaged students often means giving, particularly in those starting courses, some additional support and tutoring that convinces people they can do this and then go on to further advanced courses and do fine. That means more advising. And then when they're ready to graduate, you want to do the sort of job counseling, internship placement, career assistance, that when they leave school, they're really ready to know how to make decisions and to move into the workplace. All of that requires investment. And one of our challenges here is we have increased the size of our student body, in part response to budget cuts in previous years. And so it's not that there's a huge decline in the number of students in other non-STEM fields of the university. It's sort of like we increased the size and everybody went into a very limited set of majors, but we haven't reduced the size in any of our other majors. So finding new investment dollars to increase faculty and provide this sort of support is critical in a field that is essential for the future of this state and this nation. STEM workers are, in these whole set of fields, from engineering to computer sciences to biomedical areas, are, going to be the high-paid workers in demand in the years ahead. A top priority of this, which I must say I'm very worried about, is our chemistry building. You all toured it last year when you were here. My understanding is that it is not going to be in the current proposed budget, and I have to say that I'm going to do everything I can to change people's minds about that. As you saw what's happening to students in STEM, virtually every one of our majors in STEM requires chemistry as a prereq. We are currently running our chemistry labs from 7 in the morning until 10 at night, weekdays and weekends. And the labs are so old that there's a whole bunch of experiments that students should be doing to get hands-on chemistry work they cannot do in our labs because they're not adequately ventilated and can't handle the equipment that is needed. The longer we delay the construction of this building, the more we reduce STEM graduates in this state. We create backlogs that people can't get into chemistry, it takes longer to graduate, they can't move on into these fields that are high demand. So I'm really very concerned about the loss of the chemistry building. And this is one that should have been renovated a number of years ago, and to be waiting even further to start talking about the renovation is going to be a very serious problem for our programming in this area. All of this, of course, leads me to discussing challenges relating to the budget, what you've all been waiting for, right? Let me talk a little about the budget landscape that we are in Madison. As you all know, we were given a very clear charge 2 years ago when we got a $60 million reduction in the system. We were told not to take that budget cut, but to fill it with our reserves and draw down our reserves. And there was sort of an implicit sense of once you've used up the reserves, we'll replace that money then, but we need you to draw down reserves. So we've used up our reserves. I have, and this is not my accounting, it's the accounting of the General Accounting Board, $54 million in my discretionary reserves on a budget of $3 billion. Now, you know, if the Regents were doing their financial responsibility correctly, you should fire me for that, except we've all been told to do this, right? I mean, this is way too little in terms of the risks that an institution of my size and complexity is taking and the sort of cushion that I need. But we did what the state legislature asked us to do. The result is I have virtually no reserves left, and I'm facing, from last 2 years ago biennium, a $23 million cut that I have to take at my university starting July 1st. Any new cuts add on top of that $23 million, all right? So let's look further at the budget landscape. This is our four main sources of funding in the university. There are actually 5 things here. State tuition dollars is a percent of the budget. This is from 1976 to the last year, 2014. The state tuition dollars are the red line. Very, very steady decline in the share of the budget that the state is filling with tuition. No surprise to anyone that our state dollars have continued to shrink. The state subsidy to the university continues to fall. Our federal dollars have gone up a little bit. That's the dark blue line in the middle. But we've been very successful at retaining and even increasing our federal dollars over the last couple of decades. The green dollars are gifts and grants. Some of this is private gifts through donation fundraising. Some of this is research grants from private donations. That has gone up, though it's been a little flat in recent years. Make sure I get this right, tuition is the yellow line. And tuition dollars have crept up, but they have crept up. They haven't swept up as state dollars come down. And in part, we've been running the university more efficiently. In part, we've been increasing other sources in addition to tuition. We've hardly replaced the state dollars, dollar for dollar, with tuition dollars. And then the other thing on here, on this light blue line, is auxiliaries. That's dorms and parking and all the other things, you have police services, all the other things you do around the university, some of which are self-funding. We get money in from the dorms, we have to use it in the dorms. We get money in for parking, we have to use it in parking. So that's basically money in, money out, okay? That is what's happened overall to the different sources of funding at the university. Let me focus in on our general purpose revenue, our GPR revenue that comes to us for education, all right? The state GPR dollars are our state dollars taking out utility dollars and taking out debt service dollars, okay? And so this is everything but sort of utility and debt service. And over the last 10 years or so, you can see that the state GPR dollars have steadily declined as a share of budget. Again, tuition revenue has crept up. It hasn't begun to replace those state dollars one for one. I've put on here with a little box what things are going to look like next year, and you can see, you know, the largest decline in state dollars in our history will be down to basically 7% of our budget going into GPR, which is the state support for our educational mission. The total state dollars will be around 15% if you add back utilities and debt service, okay? That's a big decline, and it's a hard one to take in 1 year. Now, how do we fill this? Obviously, federal dollars are one thing to look at. The trouble is federal dollars, you know, while increasingly important, haven't been growing. If you've been reading the federal budget sequestration debates, you know that. Here's what's happened to our federal dollars. There was a moment of stimulus funding in 2010 where all the universities got a lot of money. If you take that out, there is some growth happening, and then it's basically flat for the last 2 to 3 years. And I don't think anyone expects the federal dollars to grow very much. That's going to, hopefully isn't going to fall, but we don't have a lot of growth opportunities there. And that can only be used to fund research. I can't use that to plug any holes in my educational program. Those dollars are tied to very specific research projects. They're not discretionary. I can turn to private fundraising. And as many of you know, I am in the midst of starting a major fundraising campaign. Gift dollars are highly important, and there's not a public university in the country that can't afford to not be raising private gift dollars these days. But let me be clear, Gift dollars, by and large, do not replace state or federal dollars, and in fact, most donors have no interest in giving to a university whose state dollars are declining because they think rather than getting something new, rather than funding something that wouldn't be funded otherwise, which is what they're excited about, we're just going to fill a hole with their dollars, and that's not very exciting for most donors. I want to be looking for gift dollars that leverage all my other sources of funding, that basically help me spend my state dollars and my federal dollars and my other dollars more effectively. So things like faculty chair. I can't use state dollars for that. I can't name faculty chairs with my federal dollars. But if I get if I get private gifts that fund faculty chairs, that's the coin of the realm for really high status faculty, to have a chaired professorship, which gives you some research dollars that are yours. You don't have to go out and raise money for them. And if I can do more of those chairs, I can attract and retain more high quality faculty, who in turn will bring in more research dollars, who in turn will raise my educational reputation, which in turn will help me use my state and tuition dollars better as well. And let me be very clear that gift dollars are tied to donor intent. They are often endowments. Our foundation holds that endowment. I have no discretionary control over any of those dollars. They are, by and large, endowments for agreed-upon contracts with the donor about how the money will be spent at a 4.5% rate off of the endowment. I cannot raid that. I would be breaking contracts and legally liable if I tried. So that, of course, well, one more thing. Minor celebration. You all know we had the biggest single gift in history this last fall from John and Tasha Margridge, wonderful, wonderful friends and donors to the university, which is entirely dedicated to faculty chairs. And I just gave you the argument about why this is such important money that helps us spend all of our other resources better. It leverages other resources. But again, I can't spend this on anything else. I've got to sign contract with the Margridges. And at the most, over time, when this is all paid in, I'll get several $1 million that will go into faculty chairs off of this endowment. That's important to me, but it's not a replacement to state funds. So outside of state funding, the only thing you're left with is tuition. That's the one thing you can increase fast when your state dollars go down fast. So if you're going to deal with large immediate budget cuts, there's a reason why one usually increases tuition in the years that state dollars go down. As you all know, we're on an undergraduate resident tuition freeze. That's what's written into the governor's budget. Here's where we currently sit at Madison relative to the other Big Ten peers. We're about in the middle, but to be honest, 2 more years of a tuition freeze, and Indiana, Ohio State, and Purdue are almost surely going to go above us. We're all clustered at right about the same level, and we'll be at the very bottom of the Big Ten. And then we're going to be looking at that and saying, the long-term perspective of the Regents and the university had been we should be around the median, right? And we're going to have to get further up towards the median, in part to fill some of these budget holes, in part to reflect our market quality. I shouldn't be the cheapest school in the Big Ten. So that leads me to look at non-resident undergraduate tuition, okay? Here we are at the bottom, or very near the bottom. And I've just told you, our applications are up. We're a hot school. I've got more people applying every year. Because I have a cap on the number of non-state students that I can take, that means that the likelihood of getting into Wisconsin is harder and harder if you're an out-of-state student. I've got real market power here. I can raise my out-of-state tuition without in any way threatening the quality of my institution or the quality of the applicants at all. And this is market power we should be taking. And indeed, I would argue for Madison in this market, we shouldn't be at the median. We should be up in the top third of these schools because we are one of the best educational quality schools and high reputation schools among this list. We shouldn't be comparing ourselves to Iowa, to be blunt. I'm sure there are Iowa grads here who are insulted by that. But there's really only one other school in the Big Ten that has the same reputation and the same admissions pool strength, and that's Michigan. I don't want to be the top tuition person out of state. I'm happy to let Michigan do that, but I wouldn't mind being 2 or 3 behind them. And I will be coming to the Regents and asking about out-of-state tuition increases. The other problem we have is with our with our professional schools. And these programs, I don't quite understand historically how we got here. This is our professional school tuition in 4 schools: medicine, business, veterinary medicine, and pharmacy. The red line is our tuition levels, and the gray line is the median tuition among their Big Ten that have these schools. Not all Big Ten schools have a pharmacy school. We are so far below the median, I don't understand this. And these are high-quality schools. They are higher ranked than almost all of their Big Ten peers. And yet, we're charging very, very low levels. These are careers that people go out into. Many of them make very good money. They go to professional school expecting to get into a lucrative career. We should at least be charging at median here. And, the comparison that I make here with medicine is there's only one other medical school in the state. That's the Milwaukee College, or the Medical College of Wisconsin, right? If you're a first-year student going to the Medical College of Wisconsin, you will be paying about $50,000 a year. If you're a first-year student going to here, you're going to be paying $25,000 a year. And, the services that we're supposed to provide are basically identical. That is a problem, and it's hard to do that. Here's our out-of-state tuition for professional schools. I understand this even less. We should at least be at the median in these markets. And again, our schools are higher quality. Here's a little anecdote. The veterinary medical school, our out-of-state tuition for veterinary medicine in Wisconsin is below the in-state tuition for the University of Illinois. So we have Illinois students who want to come to Wisconsin for vet med because it's cheaper to come here out of state than to stay in their own state and pay in-state tuition. That makes no sense at all. I'm going to be coming to the Regents to talk about this, as you might expect. Right. And let me note, I can't say this strongly enough. When you raise tuition, you can't just multiply the number of students by the tuition increase and say that's the new money you get. You have to put some of those tuition increases plowed back into increased financial aid. That will not fill a hole, but will let you continue to attract a diverse class with some low-income students, with some first-generation students, with students who wouldn't be at these schools unless you help them. And we want to do that too. So you've always got to look at the net gain out of a tuition increase, not the gross gain. All right. So let's talk about the state cuts at Madison. This is just an example of what's happening at my school. We start with a $23 million budget deficit from 2 years ago that we have to fill, that we took but filled with our reserves, and our reserves are now gone. Add on to that our share of the $150 million a year proposed cut in the governor's budget. That's another $57 million because our historical share is 38%. Now, when you start looking through the budget, you find there are a number of other things in there beyond that $150 million. For instance, several years ago, the state committed to going into matching money in order for us to create and get a large federal grant to establish the Wisconsin Bioenergy Initiative. We were involved in that at the university. A number of industry people were involved in it, and we went to the state, and the state put up money as well. All of us put up matching money, which was required by the federal grant, multi-year grant. That money is canceled in this budget. I've made a commitment to the federal government. I've got to pick it up. Okay, the state I thought had made a commitment, but turns out they didn't. So I've got an additional $3.5 million there. As many of you know, the state is eliminating its municipal service payments. I actually think this is a low number. We're probably closer to 3 or 3.5, but we're going to have to pick those up. There are other things we're still trying to figure out. I think at a minimum, we're going to be facing $86 million in costs at Madison that we're supposed to have out of the budget by July 1st of this summer, okay? In addition, and I have to count this, I told you about the fact that I was going to have a lot of faculty retention offers and that I had to match those outside offers. I'm going to have to spend around $5 million just to retain my top faculty, and I can't afford not to spend that, or we might as well go home, because then I'm no longer the quality institution I was. So I've got to count that money as necessary. It's got to be spent this year. So my goal for this year, at a minimum, is about $91 million that I have to make up. And I will tell you, this cut is just too big. If you look just at the new dollars in the budget, that's a 24% decline in our state GPR dollars, from 10% down to 7%. I showed you that slide a little bit earlier. That's huge. If you add in the other dollars, it adds up to $91 million. How much is that? It is the equivalent of getting rid of 1/3 of my faculty. It is the equivalent of getting rid of more than 1,000 of my staff. Imagine a private company about to lay off 1,000 people in the state of Wisconsin. That would get headlines. Or alternatively, let's say that I want to close a few schools. I would have to close 5 schools and still wouldn't make $91 million. Business, law, nursing, pharmacy, and med could go, and I've still got a little bit of a hole to fill. Or you want to go to medium-sized schools, I could close both engineering and my College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, and that by itself would not fill this hole. It is a very large hole. So what am I going to do? These are very preliminary numbers. We're still very much in the process of putting this together, but let me tell you about some of the numbers we're discussing. Let us assume the Regents allow me to raise out-of-state tuition in the way that I want to, and they take my proposal and approve it. That will give me a little under 20 million in year one. I'd like to have further increases in year two. That gives me another 20 million. Let's say they let me raise my state cap, which I'm going to ask for, from 27.5% to 30%. They weren't going to deal with that before April, May, or June, and my final admissions letters go out in March. So that can't help me this year, but it will help me next year. So next year I'd get a little bit less than $20 million. So those are the new revenues that I can call on. Those don't begin to fill the gap, okay? So let me look at budget cuts. The most I can get, and we've looked across the university in budget cuts in 1 year, because you just only so much you can do in this short a period of time, is about $20 million. And I'm probably going to hand that down to both our academic and non-academic units in various ways and tell them in the next year they're going to have to double that. That's a very big cut in most of these units. It's going to break a few things. It's going to involve, and I've said this, layoffs, I think, in pretty much every school and college. Where am I now? I now, in year one, have actually raised $38.5 million, and I'm short over $52 million. In year two, I've got a little bit more, but I'm still short $33 million. And remember, my discretionary reserves are $54 million. I can't fill this with reserves, so I've got to go looking for other pots of money. And if you're at my university and you have any money, you should hide when you see me coming. I don't know what I'm going to do. Jerry is going to ask me, so Chancellor Blank, how are you going to fill this hole? And the answer is, I don't know right now. I have heard it said the system can cope with these cuts. I have heard it said that Madison can cope with these cuts better than any other school in the system. That may well be true, but I will tell you, I still don't know how I'm going to cope with these cuts come July 1st. They are simply too big. A comment to the Board of Regents: if they are going to consider out-of-state or professional school tuition changes or changes in the out-of-state cap, sooner you can do that, the better, because I've got to start making adjustments fast. All right. What do these proposed cuts imply? Unfilled faculty slots, and a reduction in the number of faculty out there at exactly a time where I need some more faculty in a number of areas. Reduced student programming. What's easy to do? The easy thing to do is reverse our Madison undergraduate initiative investments. Let's reduce advising. Let's shave off a little financial aid. Let's reduce the number of faculty and increase the size of these big courses. All of that will increase time to graduation and increase student debt loads, I promise you. Let's reduce staff positions and lapses, and there will be lapses and layoffs across the university. It will reduce the quality of our education, and we will be going backwards in all the things that we have tried to make gains on in the last 10 years. Now, if everyone else were cutting at the same time, that might be a little bit of a comfort, but they aren't. The problem is I'm at a time when all of my competitors are moving the other direction. This is out of the Illinois State University data, which keeps some of the best comparable data across universities. For Wisconsin in the last 5 years, the change in state funding was more than 4%. That's before the current cut comes down, right? The national average among public schools was plus 10%. 41 of 50 states have increased their funding to higher education over the last 5 years. So my competitive edge is getting narrower and narrower, and I'm going to be falling behind very badly. Madison has had an enormous impact on this state, as has the rest of the system. It is among one of the top-ranked public universities in the world. The Wisconsin idea has driven our behavior at our campus, reaching out from our campus around the state and indeed around the nation for more than 100 years. With this budget, if you're a really top Wisconsin student, you might be looking a little harder at some of the other really top schools elsewhere in the country. And you all know it's just harder to bring really top talent back once they've left the state. There are going to be fewer new startups and a little less tech transfer because we don't have as much money for it. And there will be a declining reputation at UW-Madison, and that will filter through to all the other schools in the system as well. UW-Madison has been around for 166 years. We have a legacy of service to this state and to this nation, and I want to find ways to build on that, to preserve it, to do even more than we are doing right now, partly because higher education, by every measure, has never been more important to young people in this state or around the nation. And I will say these cuts are too large. They are too large for our university, and they are too large for the state. Thank you.